But NVIDIA's up right now 3.2% because on the same day of the Netflix earnings, Trump decides that he's going to get all these world leaders together and they're going to put $500 billion freaking dollars into something called Operation Stargate. So this is what OpenAI said about this. Let me just share this right here. And we're going to read through this. There is some controversy around if this is actually like possible to have $500 billion on it. Elon doesn't really believe they have the money, which is very interesting, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So right here, the Stargate project. The Stargate project is a new company which intends to invest $500 billion over the next 4 years building AI infrastructure for OpenAI in the United States. So literally for OpenAI, meaning, this is why people think OpenAI is going to $1 trillion, because they just have so much. I mean, quite literally, Sam Altman raised $500 billion last night. And the implications of that are going to be pretty massive in a variety of ways, especially as they try to build out GPT-15 whenever they get there. We will begin deploying $100 billion immediately. The infrastructure will secure American leadership in AI, create hundreds of thousands of American jobs, and generate massive economic benefit for the entire world. This project will not only support the reindustrialization of the United States, but also provide a strategic capability to protect the national security of America and its allies, aka if America is the best with AI, aka OpenAI, then we will have a lead against China and Russia. The initial equity funders in Stargate are SoftBank, OpenAI, Oracle, and MGX. I don't know how the hell OpenAI has any money to fund this because they lose $5 billion a year. SoftBank does have money. Oracle does have money. MGX probably has some money. But in general, not sure how OpenAI is going to be participating in the equity funding of this. SoftBank and OpenAI are the lead partners for Stargate, which SoftBank have a financial responsibility and OpenAI having operational responsibility. Okay, so that makes sense. So SoftBank's kind of funding it. OpenAI is kind of, being the sort of figure of how this ends up playing out. And then Masa-san will be the chairman. ARM, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Oracle, and OpenAI are the key initial technology partners. That makes sense. The build out is currently underway, starting in Texas, and we are evaluating potential sites across the country for more campuses as we finalize definitive agreements. I mean, like, what else can you say other than bullish? Freaking bullish. The idea that Larry Ellison and Masa-san and NVIDIA and Microsoft are going to pool together $500 billion in order to then develop something that is going to be essentially the modern AI data centers of our time in the context of the new infrastructure they're setting up, particularly in Texas, which is very interesting that they're choosing Texas to be able to do this, is pretty damn exciting. It's pretty damn exciting. Here is Trump talking about this a little bit yesterday, and then we'll keep going from there and talk more about what this means for the semis.
Welcome three of the world's leading technology CEOs. And in the case of Larry Ellison, it's well beyond technology. He's sort of CEO of everything. He's an amazing man, an amazing business person. But to announce the largest AI infrastructure project by far in history, and it's all taking place right here in America. As you know, there's great competition for AI and other things, and they're coming in at the highest level. We're joined by Oracle Executive Chairman Larry Ellison, SoftBank CEO, my friend Masa Yoshi-san, and CEO of OpenAI, and I would say the by far the leading expert based on everything I read, Sam Altman. So that's great that you're coming in together. That's a massive group of talent and money. Together, these world-leading technology giants are announcing the formation of Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the future. A new American company that will invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States, and very, very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately.
It's a big deal, dude. It's a big deal. First of all, it's a big win for Trump. I mean, his second day on the job, and he gets a $500 billion announcement over the next 4 years. $100 billion is going to be deployed immediately. All of this, if people are wondering, like, where is this money going to go to my understanding from the stuff I read last night, data centers. And of course, our girl Nancy bought VST, which is energy for a lot of these data centers, a couple of weeks ago. Why? Probably, maybe, who knows? Maybe she might have known that because I didn't know about this. I don't know if you guys knew that there was going to be some $500 billion infrastructure announcement, but I'm pretty sure this announcement didn't happen when Trump got elected or when Trump got sworn in. I'm pretty sure this has been brewing in the background for months, and now it finally got announced. Maybe Nancy knew that there was going to be a shit ton of spending on infrastructure coming up in such a in such an egregious way, $500 billion. And one of the companies that would benefit from that is obviously the energy data center plays like a VST. VST, by the way, up 5.3% in the pre-markets. This thing was up 8% yesterday, so now it is up about 15% since Nancy Pelosi disclosed that she bought. And don't even get me started on Tempest. We'll talk about that later, but this was up another 7% today. It was up 35% yesterday based off of Nancy buying it. So the point is there was a ton of momentum for AI, a ton of momentum for CapEx. NVIDIA's up 3% right here. If we look at all the semis, you've got all of them green. All of them. Dell's up 5%. Lam Research is up 1%. SMCI is up 5%. AMD's up 1%. NVIDIA up 3%. Qualcomm up a little bit. TSM up 1.3%. TSM also had a great earnings. They are now well solidified as a $1 trillion company, 1.13 trillion. Intel is up another 0.5%. I mean, it's just incredible. It's just incredible. So all of the sort of nervousness that we had in the beginning of January, which I think was fair to be nervous given how good of a year 2024 was. Not saying we shouldn't be nervous, not saying there's not going to be volatility, just saying when Netflix is crushing earnings, when the 10 years coming down, when shelter and automotive insurance, new vehicles are starting to fall down, which is a catalyst for inflation, when Christopher Waller comes on CNBC and says, actually, we think we're doing a great job on inflation and we do think it's going to come down, when Austin Goolsby's fighting with the CNBC hosts about how they're angry about inflation, he's like, what are you guys talking about? Core PCE is below 2%. And when you got the dollar that's probably going to come down in 48 hours when Japan hikes rates, which seems all but inevitable that Japan is hiking rates, and we'll look at some data on why the yen carry trade probably is not going to be a thing because the short float on the yen is gone to its lowest levels in the past couple of years. The dollar right here at 107.99. And then when you've got Stargate, $500 billion coming into AI CapEx spend, I just don't get what the bearish thesis is. Like, you've got AI firing on all cylinders. You've got the financials doing great. SoFi's at freaking $18 in the pre-markets. All the banks crushed earnings. You got Netflix, which is a consumer play, crushing earnings. You got United Airlines, which is up 5.5% after it was up 3% yesterday, after it was up 97% last year. Why? Because everyone's traveling. I'm about to buy a ticket to California on United in a couple of days. I mean, like, I don't know where the bears are getting their bearish sentiment from outside of the fact that they think things are frothy. And yes, I know the Trump meme coin is an example of things being frothy. But if we get a little bit more of a different perspective, it's more so an example of crypto just being in its prime time era in terms of the ability for so many people to get excited about it. And I get the frothy argument, but then you see these companies crush earnings and it's hard to say that it's that frothy. Why? Well, here's a stat from this morning that I think is very important to understand. Although we're early into earnings, S&P 500 companies have surprised with an 8.9% earnings beat so far. 53 out of 50 out of 500 companies have reported, so a little bit more than 10% have reported, 11%. But 8.9% of them have had a surprise, and 75% of them have beat the consensus numbers. I mean, again, I'm not saying this is time to go all in and you just have to be in the markets. Obviously, raising cash is important. There's probably going to be volatility. It's just one of those things where if anyone thought, cash is the best option of 2025, like some people did think, so far, that's not seeming to be the case. So far, what's seeming to be the case is everything is firing on all cylinders, and maybe tariffs messes it up, or maybe Amazon really does mess up on earnings and it's not. But until we see any of that evidence of that happening, it does look like we have more momentum to go. At least here in 2025. Let's hear from Dan Ives and his perspective on U.S. AI infrastructure and what this means for the software part of the broader market.
You acknowledge that there is some sort of expectation and therefore you get excited alongside. We saw the stock react in the late afternoon.
Yeah, look, Melissa, I think it's something you're going to have to start to model in. I mean, not just for names like Oracle, but especially when it comes to any of these sort of data center innovation plays, the Palantirs, Microsoft, and others. And I think now it's a question of the multiplier effect and how quick this is going to happen. But we're seeing this off to a fast start, and everything we're seeing in the Beltway, this is going to be just really, really positive for more of the data center players, from Microsoft, for Amazon, for Google, and of course for Oracle.
Hey, Dan, it's Dan. When you think about some of these numbers being thrown around, there's no specifics here. Microsoft gave some CapEx guidance, I want to say a few weeks ago. They kind of guided to maybe $80 billion in the next year or so. 40 of that was going to be overseas. Don't you get to a point where you can only build so much data center infrastructure here in the U.S., especially for these big multinationals who have to serve other places around the world? And the last part of this question is, and what about power consumption? Like, some point, there's only so much data centers you can build in the near term because you are power constrained.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, you hit on a great point, because the reality is we could talk about these CapEx numbers, but it's about, you need the grid, you need the energy, and we could talk about nuclear and other names like ACO and, and others. But if you look on the data center side, I mean, there's essentially going to be more data centers under construction than actual data centers. But now, how quickly that gets built, and especially when we'll see it in earnings, but for Microsoft, for Amazon, for Google, the CapEx is there. But now it's about monetizing and how quick. That's what the street's going to be focused on for the next 2, 3, 4 quarters.
Dan, it's Tim. So let's do that then. So let's act like today didn't happen. As you were looking at the universe of getting exposure to AI across, a number of different, let's call it just ancillary industries, but or straight out of Broadcom, or straight out of some part of the legacy players we know about. Where are you coming into today before this news?
Look, Tim, I think you're looking at not just Broadcom, but what I believe is sort of the second, third derivatives. I think this is bullish for software. I think when you look at names like Salesforce.com, Mongo, of course, names like Palantir and others, because as the data centers get built, it's skating to where the puck's going. Where are the use cases? That's really what the key is going to be over the next 2, 3, 4 quarters. I think this is bullish for software, because data centers, they get built out, the use cases are going to be software driven.
And he's right about that. It's a simple argument, but there is no point for it to build these data centers other than to train models, to do inference training. And the training for the models is either A, for something like FSD, B, for something like robotics, or C, for enterprise software. And so if software is going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of more advanced models that are going to be trained from these data centers, you would think Salesforce, Snowflake, Datadog, Palantir, et cetera, get those benefits.
But the use cases aren't clear right now. I mean, are we going to be at a point where we have the data centers in place, but the use cases, that part of the equation hasn't exactly caught up?
Yeah, I think right now it's starting to catch. I mean, I think we saw it with Benioff and Salesforce. We've seen it with ServiceNow, Palantir, and now the use cases are really going to start to explode, because these companies, when you talk about all the AI CapEx, it's about the multiplier. For every dollar spent on an NVIDIA chip, there's an $8 to $10 multiplier across the rest of tech. That's bullish for all these data center players, bullish for software. And that's going to really be the focus going into earnings season in terms of playing out these sort of next derivatives of AI.
Yeah, Dan.
So again, I think the argument, the pushback around not enough use cases, I think that argument's becoming old now. I think there's two obvious use cases: self-driving and robotics, which are going to be, we saw Jensen talk about it at CES. There's going to be massive, massive industries. It's not just Tesla that's in self-driving. Jensen's coming up with this Cosmos synthetic data platform to help all these other OEMs get into it. Robotics, obviously going to be massive. But we're seeing the use cases with a company like Palantir. If you just go on their website and see the case studies of all the different ways enterprises are using AI, in particular, how they're leveraging AIP inside of Foundry. So I think those are just going to expand further and further and further. There's going to be new use cases, new companies that are getting benefits from it. And then, in a couple of years, it's not going to be a question of what are the use cases. It's going to be a question of how many more use cases can we get, because we're seeing so much momentum on the existing use cases that are actually creating operational efficiencies within the business, which is why Palantir is going to have pricing power and be able to charge a premium. The 10-year, by the way, 4.572. If that bad boy comes down to 4.4, that will be the lowest in about a month, which would be very nice to see. On the 10-year, people forget that 10-year was at freaking 3.875 in October, when CPI was at 2.5%. So it has gone up a decent amount since then, but at least it's not at 3.8% right now. Why only full self-driving and robotics? Why not white collar work? No, I agree. White collar work as well. I mean, if you're a subject matter expert, if you're a consultant and you just need to come up with a presentation and ChatGPT, like, dude, I use ChatGPT every day. Like, I use it literally just to talk and try to get ideas and think of different stuff. I mean, it's become like a personal assistant for me, even though it's not like a agent inside of my phone, but I'm constantly asking questions to it all day just to get a better understanding of like the world. And from that perspective, I do think that for even white collar workers, they're going to get a lot of value from it as well. So transitioning from the data center $500 billion investment, which we'll talk more about later, but the gist of it is that AI spend is going through the roof and it's not stopping. And in particular, I think NVIDIA and the semis benefit from that. Let's talk about Tesla. Dan Ives raises his price target from 515 to 550. This comes after Piper Sandler raised it to 500 after 315. And he says, as we have growing confidence in the demand delivery story for 2025, along with a fast tracking of the autonomous future underneath the Trump administration, we view this as a golden era for Musk and Tesla in 2025. So here's the poll. Here's the poll I have for everybody. I'm very curious what people have to say about this, because I think this is the moment where you have to decide. This is the moment where you have to decide. It's a very simple question. Do you think of Tesla only as a car company? And when you answer this question, if you say yes, that means this stock price is egregious. Just know that. If you say yes, $420 is like you're an idiot for buying it at $420 if it's a car company. If you think of it as more as a car company, then I think you got to just kind of bite the bullet. And it's like, all right, you know, I could be wrong on the timing. It might go back to 370, but at some level, it's just like you need to be locked into where you think the world is going. And if you think the world is going to robotics and FSD, and that will dramatically compress that PE over the next 5 years by creating S curves of growth that are unimaginable, that we only saw back in 2019 for Tesla, that's when it 20x, then you believe that Tesla's going to 500, right? You believe that Tesla is going to be much more valuable than it is currently right now. We got 89% of people saying no. We got 11% of people saying yes. And so, you know, this is why the market is kind of, this is why Tesla's obviously in the 450s or in that mid 400 range, because the market overwhelmingly is thinking of Tesla more than a car company. There's no way it would get to the stock price if they didn't think of that. But still, the reason it's not exploding the way some of these other companies have exploded over the past couple of days with CPI, AI announcements, et cetera, is because the EV mandate might go away. Okay, why is that bad? Because then people might not buy as many cars. Okay, why is that bad? Because then the car company Tesla doesn't make as much money. So still, you have these generic bearish arguments around the automotive business that I think are weighing down the stock a little bit. And we know that it's probably the EV mandate because Rivian as well is down 1.28%. Both were down about 5% yesterday. So I think you have to kind of decide, what do you think of Tesla? Do you think it's more than that, or do you think it's not? Because if you think it's more, you think that this price will be cheap in 5 years. If not, you think it probably is going to be stuck trying to get better gross margins to appease the street. But I think this is the question right now in the context of Tesla long-term. So 416 on Tesla, got a price target raised by Dan Ives. Again, he's relatively bullish on the overall story. We'll see how the stock plays out a little bit later today. It did not benefit from that EV mandate executive order happening last night. Nonetheless, Elon doesn't care that much because he's focused on a lot of other things to get Tesla to the next level besides just automotive deliveries. Speaking of Elon Musk, that Bloomberg article a week ago said Elon might buy TikTok. We finally got some comments on if that would be the case.
Well, let me do this first.
Are you open to Elon buying TikTok?
Say,
Are you open to Elon buying TikTok?
I would be if you wanted to buy it.
Have you discussed it with Larry Ellison?
I'd like Larry to buy it too. I have the right to make a deal. So the deal I'm thinking about, Larry, let's negotiate in front of the media. The deal, I think, is this, and I've met with owners of TikTok, the big owners. It's worthless if it doesn't get a permit. It's not like, oh, you can take the U.S. The whole thing is worthless.
Trump is right about that, by the way. I mean, if you get the U.S. business outside of TikTok, it is not going to be worth as much as it could be worth with the 170 million users that use it in the United States.
The permit, it's worth like $1 trillion. So what I'm thinking about saying to somebody is buy it and give half to the United States of America, half, and we'll give you the permit. And they'll have a great partner, the United States. And they'll have something that's actually more valuable because they have the ultimate partner, and the United States will make it very worthwhile for them in terms of the permits and everything else. But so think of it, you have an asset that has no value or has $1 trillion value. It all depends on whether or not the United States gives the permit. So what I'm saying is let the United States give the permit and the United States should get half. Sounds reasonable. What do you think?
Sounds like a good deal to me, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
So now I would imagine it sounds like a good deal to Mr. Larry Ellison. founder of Oracle, because Oracle was hosting all the data for TikTok servers in the United States over the past couple of years. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know if the United States could own 50% of TikTok, because we don't really like nationalize companies that often in the United States. I think Trump, maybe by saying the United States, he doesn't literally mean the government. He means like a US entity that's getting the benefit of TikTok. But in general, we got another 90 days. I think that was extended for us to be able to figure out what's going to happen with TikTok. And if there is some deal that gets done, maybe Elon's going to be in the middle of it. Maybe he's going to be brokering the deal. Maybe he potentially actually buys TikTok. Who knows? But it does look like there's going to be a US entity that gets access to TikTok. This is not going to be a beneficial thing for Meta or Google. Now, I don't think it's going to be a bad thing for Meta and Google, but there was a tailwind coming for both of those names if TikTok did officially get banned, but TikTok's not getting banned. So whatever tailwinds that's going to happen for Meta is likely going to happen through actual earnings growth for Meta, which hopefully we will see going into 2024 Q4 earnings. Speaking of Meta, this is a upgrade from the street that we got this morning from Jefferies, 7:15. Expectations for Meta are reasonable, up 4% since Q3 versus Amazon up 24% and Google up 17%, which is actually reasonable. I mean, Meta is only up 4% since Q3 compared to the other hyperscalers that have gone up double digits. While we see potential in downside to free cash flow estimates as Meta delivers initial full year 2025 CapEx and total expense guidance, we believe this would likely be a bottom and that there would be strong returns from these investments. Our ad checks remain bullish on Meta, and our convers with teens indicate that TikTok's ban is driving them to IG Reels. Reiterated by $17 under $15 is 24x our fiscal year 2026 EPS. It's one of those things, bro, where it's like, again, we talked about this a lot in the final 5 days of December, because every single analyst we were watching on CNBC was saying large caps into small caps. That's the rotation. And in the first 20 days of January, it's like large caps into large caps, more large cap potential, more large cap spending, more large cap ad growth, more large cap momentum in terms of different potential acquisitions they can do now that we have Lena Khan out of the FTC. I mean, there's just so many reasons to be bullish on large caps. Not to say small caps can't do well, and we could have an everything rally again like 2024, which would be insane if 2025 is a repeat of 2024. But it seems like the big get bigger. I would buy NVIDIA over Oracle. I've never been a big fan of Oracle because although Oracle is an amazing company, amazing stock, and I think they were up 90% last year, they don't grow like NVIDIA grows. Now, Oracle right here up 10.94% right now. The reason they're up is because of this whole Stargate thing, which makes sense for Oracle. But their growth is not anywhere near like NVIDIA's top line revenue growth. And so from a, when you just look at a PEG ratio or a price to earnings ratio in terms of fiscal year 2026, NVIDIA is cheaper than a lot of the biggest names because the market's still expecting NVIDIA to compound at 50% over the next 2 years. So I still would pick NVIDIA over Oracle, but I mean, Oracle's a $500 billion company. They've done incredibly well over the past year, and they doubled basically last year. It does seem like they are not slowing down in terms of the CapEx data center spend that they will be deploying as well.